the thing is, I finished Dragon Quest VI.
Did you now?
Well, not now. A couple days ago, really.
Oh, okay. Did you a couple of days ago?
Mm-hmm. That I did. Not my favorite game.
Yeah.
Not even not my favorite game in the series. Just not my favorite game kind of in general.
Oh.
Okay?
Well, okay, but you only have one favorite game. I mean, that's what favorite means, right?
Right.
Right.
Thank you, sir, for your accuracy and pedantism.
If our roles were reversed, you'd be doing the same exact thing to me.
I know. But as much as there were parts of it that I didn't like, it still felt good to beat the final boss.
Yeah.
You know, especially since I did it on the first try, by the skin of my teeth again.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me they're actually really good at balancing their game challenge. You know, that final boss fight, if you just barely make it, that's about where you want to be.
Yeah, that true of so many things, you know.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I always tell people that's kind of when you're building an encounter in D&D, that's the target that you're trying to hit. Figure out what'll kill them and then back it off a skosh.
Yep. Yeah. But overall, the thing was just, I think I mentioned before, there's like 2 different worlds. Well, that's not entirely accurate. There are 2 different worlds and a third, and then a smaller fourth, which is a little too much bouncing around between different maps and locations on those maps, especially since some of the locations on the first 2 maps are identical, aside from the primary difference between those 2 different maps. Okay? I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm being, deliberately vague about things. But
yeah, I mean, and you're giving it such a good sell that probably people are going to want to rush out and play it, so you don't want to spoil it.
I know. It had a lot of activities, extraneous activities that I just didn't care to participate in, but yet was somehow forced to in some respects. Because
breeding giant flightless riding chickens, were you?
No.
Oh wait, no. I'm sorry. That's the Final Fantasy pointless side quest.
But there's I'll just give you one example. There is what they call a style contest, which is basically a fashion show. Because now in 6, all your gear came with style points. And the more style points you have, the more style you have, and therefore the higher you'll place in this competition. And if you can pass enough levels in this competition, you will be given the item you actually need to complete the rest of the game.
So, beating the game is gated behind a fashion show?
Yes.
That's an interesting design choice.
It is an interesting design choice. It is not one I like. No, I did not sign up for Fashion Show, the RPG.
No, that's Final Fantasy X-2. Yeah. It's Fashion Show, the RPG. The few people who played that abomination are laughing hysterically at that, I assure you.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It actually had a class system where you could change classes on the fly by changing your clothes in mid-battle. And what you have to understand is the 3 characters were all scantily clad magical anime girls.
Oh, man.
So there was not a lot of fabric involved in any of their costumes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it was basically you changed your abilities on the fly by playing dress up at the enemies.
Right.
And yet it was more complicated than that too, because you had to actually combo your clothing. You would have to change. You would change from specific outfit to specific outfit to specific outfit to activate abilities, and you would actually design your own outfit transition combos using various templates. And now that I actually come to explain this, it really sounds ridiculous.
It does. It sounds. I think the secret is it was ridiculous before you explained it, too.
I know, but I just had to tell someone else. Just to make sure someone else has heard of it and that I'm not just hallucinating this.
Right.
Anyway. Fashion show gated, victory gated behind fashion show. Right.
Continue. Well, I don't want to drag this out too long. Just suffice to say, Dragon Quest VI is my least favorite of the Dragon Quest games so far. Mm-hmm. Largely because of all the extraneous activity you have to go through, and the fact that you have to switch between worlds so frequently to get things done, and their what do they call it? Their profession system, whatever it is,
classes, professions, jobs, whatever.
Yeah, trade. Your trade is what they call it in the game.
Fine.
Yes. Yeah, I know. But,
our classes are different.
Yes, our classes are different, but it was like you had to multi-class to get to the good classes. Mm-hmm. Like you couldn't just be a paladin.
Right.
You had to be a warrior and a priest first.
There's another game like that. Hold on.
And each of those had to be leveled up separately. And you could only level them up by winning fights against appropriately leveled foes. So if you were in a part of the story that had you going to a lower level area, you couldn't level up your trade, which really drug that process out nicely. Anyway, I finished 6. I beat it. Hooray. Good for me. I don't actually have to ever play it again, which is always nice.
You know, technically you didn't ever have to play it.
Well, true.
So are you continuing though? You're still...
I am. I'm 30 hours into 7.
God bless you. Only 110 more to go.
I am level 15 and I am 30 hours into 7.
7, if I recall, 7 is the one where the world is just a vast empty ocean until you start restoring long lost islands and continents back to existence, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I love it. So far it's been great. Because each island...
It's never what I expect.
Each island is its own.
You enjoyed the first one, you're enjoying the 7th one. What is wrong with you?
I don't know. Each island is its own self-contained story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And an island can exist in 2 possible places at the same time. One in the past and one in the present.
Oh, good. So it's time travel.
You go to the past to correct whatever went wrong so the island can show up in the present. And then you go back to that island to do a couple of other little things. But the point is, I'm actually really enjoying this structure because there's a larger story going on, and you get fed bits and pieces of it as you go to each island and whatnot.
Sure,
but within each island, you have a self-contained adventure. Okay? And they don't take forever. They don't draw it out all over the place. There's maybe 2 or 3, sometimes 4 locations on each island that are essential to your story, and you just boom, 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 you get them, you're done. That's, you've done that island, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You collect, through the course of your adventure, you collect these little, like, puzzle pieces and whatnot.
Right.
So you start out, you find, like, a puzzle piece or 2, and then you put those, in the place where they go to bring that island, make that island available to you. So you go to that island, you do all the story there, you pick up and find another couple, 3 or 4 little of these puzzle pieces. You bring them back. Then once you've got all that island is now available in the present, and you can then go back to that island and collect up a couple more puzzle pieces.
Oh,
okay.
Goody.
But, see, I thought this was going to be really tedious, but it's not. Because what happens is the dungeons don't change.
Okay.
All right. So you go into, say, the first island, and there's this, complex little dungeon thing going on, right? And you fumble your way through it, provided you're not cheating. You fumble your way through it, don't know where anything is. You fight all these things because you keep running into them, blah, 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 blah. You do the thing, you kill the boss, bing-a-bing, you go back home. Now, you have to go collect another couple of pieces, which are now available on the island in the present. They're in the same dungeon, usually.
Mm-hmm.
But now, you're an expert on that dungeon.
Right.
You don't have to go, you don't get lost. You know where everything is and what it's doing and whatnot. And how to work the various traps and puzzles and all that kind of thing.
So you basically have to do every dungeon twice.
Essentially, yes.
This is what you're arguing makes it not tedious.
Yeah, I am actually. because everything else about the island will have changed, and you will get to see the results of your handiwork in the past, in the present, or the results of decisions made in the past, in the present, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
Which I think is nice. It's a little continuity and whatnot.
Yeah.
And just that feeling of having mastered that dungeon so that you can just go right in and get what you need wherever it is, is I think nice as well. It's got some other things going for it, but by the same token, I can see where people don't like it or didn't like it when it came out, and I can see why. You are immediately saddled with the world's worst companion. Annoying, pushy, bossy, unwilling to take personal responsibility for things she has done particularly, instead blaming you and the rest of the party at all times. Not one redeeming feature. Also, she is the entitled child of the town's mayor.
She's yeah, I was going to ask, she's the daughter of the leader of Fishtown or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
I remember the oddest little details from my 20 hours of getting bored with that game.
Yes. Yeah. She's the worst, and I wouldn't have her in the party, and it asked me like 3 different times if I wanted her to tag along, and I kept saying no, and it kept saying, nope, too bad, you get her anyway. Don't give me a choice if there's no option for me not to do what you think you want me to do.
Yep.
But that's, I mean, there are other things that I can see, because they changed the way the random encounters work. They're not really random anymore. Mm-hmm. It is possible, if you're clever and patient enough, to totally avoid any random encounters.
Right.
Which throws your XP gain off.
Yeah.
So they have to be really... I think this is why the game is as long as it is. Because you can avoid so much of the just pure leveling stuff that goes on. If you choose to.
To your detriment when you run into an encounter such as a boss that you cannot avoid.
Right.
Right. There's a couple of games like that. That was Earthbound, where the enemies actually appear on the overworld map, so you can avoid them. Yeah. Though they were a little tricky to avoid because they chased you.
Well, these chase too, but you can outrun them.
Chrono Trigger, you can see most of the enemies on the overworld, and you can actually avoid them. But again, it's always to your detriment to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we made this optional, but it's really not. It's you can optionally screw yourself later.
Yes, exactly. which, like I say, is why I think the game is as long as it is because they had to guarantee a certain amount of XP in order to get to an appropriate level where you could handle the bosses in the end stage and whatnot.
Or they could just, make the bosses commensurate with the power level they actually expect you to have. It's like,
sure.
Well, we had to add more grind because the bosses were too powerful. What could we do?
Yeah. But anyway, I'm actually enjoying it. It's a nice change of pace from the previous 6.
Yeah.
I'm having fun with it. It's a much better. It's like a refresher, a little, not like a refresher course, but just a little refreshing of the interest in the willingness to play the series.
I mean, I've been playing Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo, a game which I had very mixed memories of, had never beaten as a child. It is a very beloved game that everybody speaks very highly of, that I am discovering apart from the graphics and sound, is filled with very clever, unique ideas that were absolutely hamstrung by their own implementation. And I think the game is bad.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to leave it at that. Because actually, I'm going to brag a little bit. Damn it. I'm actually feeling a little bit good about myself.
Okay.
So, as you and probably some other people know, I've been going through various health problems.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things was I had, about 5 or 6 years ago, started to turn my life around, lost actually a couple 100 pounds and, started eating well, doing all of this, got myself up to running a 5K, and it has all gradually fallen apart. Mm-hmm. So over the last few weeks, I have started retraining myself at running, and I just hit week 3 of the 5K trainer that I've been using, which is the Zombies Run 5K trainer app.
Sure.
And week 3 is a brutal week. So basically the idea is it's a couch to 5K trainer, right? So the idea is if you are completely unathletic, it gradually works you up to being able to run about 3 miles in a bit. Right? And it's which is totally fine. Yeah, I wasn't actually at the point where I needed to get right off the couch. But I had lost enough of my progress that I really needed to redo it. And I'm actually feeling very good for the first time in a long time.
Oh, good.
So, but and I've actually started losing weight again. But I wanted to suggest that, I know, I tweet the Zombies Run, every time you finish a run or a training session or whatever, you can share the little tweet and it shares your stats and gives you a little bit of the story. And I know some people have asked me about it, what is this thing? And there's apparently still some people who don't know what it is. So I actually wanted to just give it a plug because it's really cool. So Zombies Run is an exercise app that you put in your phone. And there's 2 different versions of it. You can get the Zombies Run app or you can get the 5K trainer. The 5K trainer actually takes you through a series of walk-run drills and leg exercises and stuff, and 3 days a week, 3 days a week for 8 weeks. And then by the end of it, and I can attest that this works, by the way, because at the end of my first run with it, 4 years ago, I ran my first 5K. And ran the whole thing, and I think I ran it all in 36 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was running around a little under a 12-minute mile, I think. So, which, pretty good for, at that point, a 36-year-old who had stopped exercising, at 18. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, what's really neat about this app, though, is that there is a story to it. There's a story that plays out in the background where it is a post-zombie apocalypse. So the world has been overrun with zombies. You are living in one of the few little townships and settlements of the surviving humans, and you are being trained as a supply runner. So your job is to run away from the town, gather supplies, and bring them back. And you don't have to do anything other than run. It's just that the game, that's just the story of it. And while you're doing the run, people are communicating with you over your headset. So you're getting the chatter from different characters in the game. You get to know them and what have you. The 5K trainer is actually the township's doctor. She's training you to be a runner. So she's actually telling you, okay, now it's time to walk and run and whatever. But at the same time, there's little stories that develop even in the 5K trainer where you start to get to know the characters. And I just met Janine tonight. Not the first time because I've done this program before. Janine is the quartermaster who, she handles all the food. And, I've met Rajit, who is an aspiring novelist, and he handles the dorms there and stuff like that. So there's all these different cute little characters, but there's actually, it's not campy. It's not silly. The story is actually a little bit serious. You actually really do get attached to the characters. and some of the things that happen to them are pretty sad. Like, you run somebody's girlfriend gets killed in the first mission you do for the 5K trainer. So that's not much of a spoiler.
Huh.
But through the rest of it, that the character who lost his girlfriend, he's affected by it. And it affects future runs. And online there's a little base builder game that you could, so as you do the, pick up supplies and whatever, you do a little base builder game online and stuff like that. It's really neat. And it's not as bad. The 5K trainer is not as bad as you might think it is. Working yourself up from nothing to running a 5K, it's hard. You have to be serious about it. You have to go out and work and push yourself. But it's not like an insurmountable obstacle. And I say this as someone who started doing it when I was literally, 5 pounds shy of 400 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I was a little lighter than that because I had just come out of the hospital, and, nothing makes you lose weight like, a week in the hospital. Yeah. But I don't recommend that as your weight loss program. But so if you've been thinking about getting healthy and getting in shape and doing something, I know I'm talking to the audience, which is not what we're supposed to do. We talk to each other, but I'm breaking the fourth wall here and saying, if you have been thinking about this and you want to just get out there and start doing something to feel a little better about yourself, it's not that hard. Grab the Zombies Run 5K Trainer app and just start doing it. It starts you off simple. Mostly you walk, and every minute or so you run for 15 seconds, and just a slow jog for 15 seconds. And it works you up from that to, hey, you can jog three and a bit miles without, you can do it. And you don't have to slow down and walk if you really push yourself. So I know, I'm sorry, I broke the fourth wall there and I did a plug, but I just want, because one of the things about the gaming community is that we're not always the healthiest people in the world.
No, this is true.
I hate to say it, but you go to a convention. I mean, you and I know from experience. You and I are not the healthiest people in the world.
No.
But you go to the gaming conventions and you can see it. And there's so many people there who, like, I've talked to people who actually, they saw me starting this and they're like, man, I wish I could do something like that. Man, I'm proud, you're doing great. You should be proud of yourself. And it's like, stop saying that stuff. If you want to do this, and I'm not telling you should or you shouldn't or whatever, you have to make your own choices. But if you seriously want to do it, this is a way. And it's not as hard as you think. I got Tiny started on the same thing.
Cool.
So she started it. Now she's actually doing better than I am because she didn't fall off the program. So now 3 or 4 times a week, she goes out and just has a 30 to 40 minute jog. She's not even training anymore. She just goes out and runs 3 or 4 times a week. And I asked her about it. I'm like, if you came back in time and told yourself a year ago, you would be going out 3 or 4 times a week and just, having a jog for 40 minutes and, you could do it. It would be hard, but you could do it. Would you believe yourself? She's like, no, that's insane. So, look, anyway, done preaching. I just wanted to brag because even though tonight was a brutal night and week 3 is a huge spike in difficulty that I knew was coming, I'm feeling really good about myself, and anybody else can feel really good about themselves too. So there.
Well, congratulations.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, preaching done. Now I'm talking to you again.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I am happy that you are happy and pleased with yourself.
Thank you.
That is excellent. Ambassador Eduardo wrote into the website on episode 9, in our referencing our discussion on alien mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
He says and I'm quoting now. He says, it got me thinking about the heptapods in Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life short novel, and also the film adaptation, The Arrival. In the book, it is explained that the heptapods do not see things in terms of cause and effect. They transcend the difference between past, present, and future, and experience time as a simultaneous occurrence of all events that were, are, and will be. However, since they already know what will happen, they are literally incapable of expressing free will.
Mm-hmm.
The short story explained very carefully how free will and precognition are completely paradoxical and cannot coexist in a creature's mind.
Assuming perfect precognition, perfect and accurate precognition.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's always sort of like every other story with precognition, even like limited precognition, deals with that theme of once you have precognition, the future that you are going to live must somehow take into account the fact that you know it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, come to think of it, that was actually the plot of the short story Minority Report that I don't want to get back into from our long discussion of Philip K. Dick stories.
Right.
Was predicting a future based on your own knowledge of the future. But yeah, I mean, that's a neat theme. There's other alien races like that. Right off the top of my head, the prophets in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The wormhole aliens.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They existed outside of time. They had nonlinear time. And they did not understand, like, the first the pilot episode, because the pilot episodes of every Star Trek show have always been just the most exciting bits of storytelling ever. The pilot episode is a character trying to explain the concept of linear time over the course of about 40 minutes to a group of aliens that literally cannot comprehend it. Because they cannot fit the concept in their brain. This is going to be a great series.
Yeah.
And then the war broke out and everything got much more exciting.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
Actually, I think some of them did.
Yeah.
But, and then I'm trying to think, there's another race popped into my mind with that, too. Oh, the Tralfamadorians. Kurt Vonnegut,
yeah.
right? Kilgore
Right.
Trout. His Sirens of Titan. They were primarily in Sirens of Titan. They make a brief appearance in Slaughterhouse 5. And it was this alien race that they were unstuck in time. They could see the past and the future.
Okay.
Right?
Great.
No, I could be wrong on that.
See, I have a problem with all of this.
Do you?
I do. I have a huge problem with all of this. And it's exactly the problem we talked about last time.
Which is?
Which is that this is a human brain coming up with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter which way you twist it and how you try to, make things feel different and look different and be different, it's still all coming from the human frame of reference.
Yeah. And yeah, I said much the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think you can also have, like, there is some respect that has to be given to the human imagination as well.
Well, yeah, there's nothing suggests that there isn't, but I feel like if we ever really encounter an alien intelligence that is vastly different than ours,
mm-hmm.
that we are going to, nobody will have come up with it before, because it will be based on things that we just don't even know or recognize.
Right, things that we don't realize are uniquely human because we don't imagine there is any other way for them to be.
Right.
Though I will say that the concept of cause and effect is right up there with things that you don't think about are a product of your own mind.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of cause and effect, you tend to think of them in terms of, like physics and deterministic science. I don't know. But I do know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
No.
We're not going to read a story that has, no matter who it comes from or where it comes from, that is going to be really an alien mindset.
Well, now, at the risk of going a little off color here.
Oh, here we go.
And I do not mean to offend anybody, but there is the possibility, if you consider the possibility of a story written by a schizophrenic. You know, to some extent, someone with a serious schizophrenia, you know, could conceivably write a story that would be utterly alien to a human mind.
I don't know about that. I have my doubts.
Okay. It's just interesting food for thought.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't want to turn that into a big debate over, you know, schizophrenic authors or anything. And like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm disrespecting a mental illness. But, you know, at a certain level of cognitive dissonance and loss of contact with reality, the mindset would become alien. You know, and then if you could get that person,
would it though, or would it? No, I don't want to. We don't want to launch into
you're
debate.
right.
We don't want to launch into that debate. No,
yeah.
Never mind.
Okay, sorry, I went there.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Ambassador Bill wrote into the website on episode 9 as well. Wanted to know, which settings have you gents used in your campaign worlds? High fantasy, obviously, but have you tried arcane punk or steampunk? Have you tried turning a piece of fiction like, you know, anime or a book or a cartoon or a TV show or a movie or a song into a campaign setting? No GM has ever done that in their life.
Wow. Well, the sarcasm meter is pegged off the scale high there. Where did that come from?
I feel like there's a lot of people who have done what he is asking about. I know I have. I'm pretty sure you've tried in some way or other.
I've played with a lot of different settings, though. I will say that when I'm doing D&D or doing other fantasy, I tend to fall toward, you know, high or epic fantasy. And that's pretty, like, I have no stomach for steampunk or spellpunk crap. I really don't. No, thank you. I don't even like psionics. I don't like I want my fantasy fantastic and, you know, not science-y.
My contention has always been that you don't need psionics in a world that has magic.
Right. But as far as, what's the most interesting thing you've done, like, that you've ripped off of a piece of pop culture?
Oh, gosh.
Have you tried to convert anything into a game?
Yes, I've run a Discworld game that nobody but me knew was in Discworld.
Did you not tell them, or had they not read Discworld?
I did not tell them, and I think about 3 of the 4 had not read Discworld.
Okay.
Which is fine.
So you stacked the deck really against that game.
It was more, I didn't really want them to know it was Discworld as part
of it.
Oh,
okay.
So it wasn't really obviously Discworld, but that was certainly the inspiration for the whole game and campaign and what was going on in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also run a John Carter game that nobody knew was a John Carter game until it was all over and done and I told them. Because again, nobody had read.
Right.
You know. And that was a little more obviously John Carter than the other one was obviously Discworld.
Yeah.
But those are the 2 I can think of right now. I'm certain though that like any good GM, I've read bits of something or seen a bit of a movie or whatever that I can turn that into some sort of encounter or adventure in the game we're playing. Oh
yeah. Yeah, I mean every GM does that. We were talking about that earlier. GMs don't steal, they pay homage.
Yes. Yeah. But most of my games in the fantasy genre tend to be just things I've made up, you know, worlds I've made up and that kind of stuff. And then that, of course, is naturally inspired by whatever I've seen or read or listened to or whatever. But
they tend to stick mainly to the fantasy genre.
Yeah, mainly to the fantasy genre. I have very few reasons to go outside of the fantasy genre. If I do, it's a specific IP I'm going to, like Star Wars or something similar to that.
Right. I've discovered that I actually have a tendency to splash in cosmic and Cthulhu horror.
Oh, that's nice.
Which I didn't realize. And in fact, like, I always insisted that I had no interest in horror, especially cosmic horror and Cthulhu, until my players, after one campaign, or in the middle of one campaign, that was basically about completely alien beings terraforming the world in incomprehensible ways, which I think we talked about. Mm-hmm. They said, for someone who really hates horror and Cthulhu, you should run a lot of it. Like, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I'm the same way. I tend to keep my fantasy in worlds that I have mainly created. When I get away from fantasy, I do tend to get a little bit more creative. I have run this. I love the TV show Sliders. And I have run that. And
there was a whole RPG for Sliders, right?
Well, there was in Alternity, there was a source book called Tangents, which was about alternate dimensions.
Yeah,
and also for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, there was a book called Transdimensional Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was about time travel and dimensional travel.
Mm-hmm.
So those two I can think of. And beyond that, I have repeatedly tried to find a good home, a good system for running my version of what Warehouse 13 could have been if it was good. Because I really love that, modern world, secret agents, hunting down magical relics. Like, all the ancient relics from the past are really magical and really do exist. Like, there really is a Holy Grail and an Ark of the Covenant. Like the Indiana Jones stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they hunt it down and they store it away because it's too dangerous to let it loose in the world and too unpredictable. I like that, and Warehouse 13, the Sci-Fi Channel series, was such an utterly bad execution of a concept that got me really excited. The other one, the Librarians series, is a little better, but it's not great. At least it actually refers to relics that existed. Like there was the weirdest thing at Warehouse 13 because they were like, oh, Harry Houdini's wallet can communicate with the dead because it was his wallet and it picked up his magic. Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right, sure.
There was one episode where I swore they were building up to the Spear of Destiny. The Spear of Longinus that supposedly pierced Christ on the right, with famous magical artifact from historical magical artifact, right? I swore they were building up to it, and they decided it was like the trident of King of Poseidon or something. Which, like, okay, I mean that's so generic, and like I don't even know if Poseidon really had a trident or if there's ever been myths about Poseidon's trident.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a character, she was trying to destroy the world with this spear-shaped object. And, I was watching I actually think I was watching that episode with my parents. And, that was back when I was living with them for a time. And
I think I watched like the first season of Warehouse 13.
Yeah.
And the only memory I have of it is some chair that was evil. Or you sat in it and it made you evil, or something. Something about a chair. Like an office chair kind of thing. I don't know. I can't remember. But that's all I've got.
Oh, yeah.
From, like, the first...
Was that in the episode? That might have been in the episode with the Deep Vault, where they also had Sylvia Plath's typewriter, the typewriter that made you depressed? Because sure.
If so, I don't remember that part. I just remember something goofy about a chair. That's all I remember.
It was like the comfy chair from The Tick.
Yeah.
You ever see that cartoon show?
Yes. Tick. You're thinking Chairface Chippendale.
No, sir. I am
No?
not thinking of the character chair face Chip and Dale. In a season 2 or 3 episode, someone had developed the comfiest chair in the world. And if you sat in it, you would never, ever want to get out of it. And they were using it. I think it was the world's most comfortable chair. I can't remember which episode it was from. But at one point, the Tick sits down in it, and he cannot be... Basically, he has the same scene that other serious shows have where the character is under mind control and trying to resist it. I can't kill my friend, and they're struggling with the gun in their own hand, except he's struggling to get out of the comfiest chair in the world because it's just that comfy.
Okay, whatever. Oh man, I sure missed that cartoon.
That was great.
And I missed the original TV show too.
The live action one?
Yeah.
I found that one very disappointing.
Well, yes, it was disappointing, but we knew it was going to be, and I still managed to enjoy it.
You're a better person than I am.
Yeah, whatever. I don't like the new one. The new one is like,
I'm not even watching it.
Yeah.
We're now on the third remake removed here, so
Yes.
There's nothing left. And, you got to picture every series has a soul, and every remake takes a bit of it.
Yeah.
So at this point, the remake is, it's done. This is just like Lord Voldemort's whole Horcrux here of TV series.
Ambassador Daniel wrote in by email. He wanted to point out a couple of things about the Wong-Baker face pain scale.
Okay.
That needs a better name or a shorter name or something. He wanted to point us...
very mean to Doctors Wong and Doctors Baker.
Yeah, whatever. He wanted to point out that there's actually an alternative scale.
Okay.
That kind of goes by the same thing. It was developed by the VA, the Veterans Administration. Mm-hmm. It goes off of how distracting the pain is. A 1 is pain you hardly notice. A 4 is distracting, but you can do the usual activities. A 7, and it has become the focus of attention and prevents daily activities. And a 10 is as bad as it could be. Nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm.
He linked us a PDF of it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. I clicked the
link. It will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
It has another face scale, though I don't think that this does much to improve on the Wong-Baker scale, he says.
That was going to be my only point, that still, that face at number 10 is not a face that is experiencing pain that is so bad that nothing else in the world exists except that pain.
Uh-huh. He also wanted to point out that the Wong-Baker scale was really developed specifically for children, including being a standardized representation of the faces kids drew to represent the level of pain from the standard pain scale.
Then why was it on the wall of an adult emergency room? Well, I guess they have children in the emergency.
Children have emergencies once in a while.
Don't they have parents to handle that?
No. As has been proven, children either have no parents at all or one helicopter parent.
One helicopter parent?
Yes, they're always hovering.
Oh, okay. Wow. I was just the perfect straight man for you there.
No, that's not original with me. That is actually what they're called. Those parents that hover over their children and try to shepherd them through every little piece of their life and day and whatnot. They're the ones who call every day while they're away at college to check up. And if the child did not get a good grade, they call the dean or whoever, and they're trying to micromanage their child's life. They hover. They're helicopter parents.
I know, but I still there was green to your McGillicuddy there.
Okay,
I was just saying. Which,
right.
By the way, have you ever seen the Kids in the Hall sketch McGillicuddy in Green?
I don't think so.
It is an excellent sketch of a a pair of vaudeville comedians, one of whom is the worst straight man in existence and ruins absolutely every one of the routines, including the who's on first bit.
Oh, nice. You remember we had a discussion 3 or 4 shows ago about what a given system in a game says about the rest of the game?
The question of how much in a game is Word of God?
No. The one where we discussed the magic system, where it was a component magic system, basically.
Okay.
Right? And then we said, okay, what would that system say about the rest of the game and how it works?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, well, this is kind of a follow-on from that, in a way.
Okay.
It's this. How do the designers of D&D want you to play the game?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do to encourage that, and what do they do that discourages that?
Okay.
So let's start with the first part. How do the people who made D&D want you to play the game?
All right. Well, you want me to take this, huh?
Yeah. Take it and run with it. See where we end up.
Well, here's the thing: is there is the idealistic answer, and then there is the cynical answer.
Is there somewhere in between there that is the actual answer?
Possibly the sort of Rashomon answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Here's the deal. Ideally, I have to imagine that every designer of D&D wants you to play the game in whatever way gives you the most fun. Okay, I gotta imagine that when you're a game designer, that's your goal, is you want people to have the most fun possible playing your game.
Sure.
However, cynically, or I don't even know if this is cynically, I guess this is just a basic understanding of human nature. The designers are game designers, and they know they are game designers, and they know their stuff. And they know there are good ways and bad ways to play a game. Ways that are more entertaining and ways that are less entertaining. And they also know there are ways you can play that screw up your game or limit the amount of fun you could be having without maybe you realizing it, and you could do better. So, and because they are the game designers, they know the best way to play the game, and they're intimately familiar with the system. So, cynically, I would have to say, the game designers want you to play the game exactly the way they play it. Because that's the best way. And even with an understanding that everybody plays games differently and has different engagements and different enjoyments and whatever, there is still that part of them that has to sit there and say, yeah, but I made this game and I know the best way to do it. And somewhere in between, obviously, somewhere the balance of those two forces is what they actually want.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for.
I don't know that I was looking for any given answer. I just wanted to see what your answer was.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's my answer. Like, okay. I mean, realistically speaking, they sat down and designed a game. Okay, they put in a whole bunch of work to write up all these rules and play test the rules and discard the rules and think this is a good rule and this is a bad rule and this makes it easier to play and this gets in the way and whatever. So clearly they had a vision in mind for how the game should be played because they actually went and wrote it down.
Right.
They have a sense of it. And of course, they also have some sense that they have to allow a certain amount of leeway, especially in a role-playing game, because most of the experience that makes a role-playing game unique is the leeway that it affords. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, somewhere in between those two, where they would like you to play the game the way you have fun, but they know the way that most people are probably going to have fun with it. Or at least they have to believe they do, or else they're bad at game design. Because if they believe they didn't design the game in a way that most people would have fun with it, then they purposely designed an unfun game. Right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what to do with this question.
Well, it's tough, isn't it, though?
Well,
because when you design a video game, right? like take Metroid, all right? When somebody designed Metroid, they had in their head the way they wanted you to play the game, right?
Right.
You could, I can't because I've never played Metroid, but you could explain how the designers of Metroid want you to play it, right?
Yes.
Okay, do that.
Okay, well, there have been a lot of different games in the Metroid franchise, and at least 2 different groups of designers, and the designs have evolved over time. Right. So I'll take probably the most well-known game. I'll take Super Metroid.
Okay.
Okay. Super Metroid presents itself with what is ostensibly a wide open world, and you have a single goal when you reach this world. It is locate this thing that was stolen by a space dragon. I'm also trying to do this spoiler-free, because I really think Super Metroid is one of those games that is a work of art and really worth playing. But what they want you to do is wander around this planet, gradually building up your power by discovering different powers and artifacts and, advancements and stuff, until you are able to locate the thing you are looking for and also equal to the challenge of defeating it. So they want you to have a joint sense of growth and discovery. However, they actually don't want you to wander aimlessly, even though they want you to feel like you could. And that's really the crux of why Super Metroid was designed the way it is. Because most of Super Metroid's design is around ways to make you feel like you could go anywhere, but to nudge you in the proper direction. And Super Metroid is actually a masterclass in those design tricks.
Okay.
So that's what they want you to do. They want you to wander freely, explore, feel like you're getting more powerful, and feel like you're searching, and also that you're alone on an alien planet, until such time as you are powerful enough to deal with the challenges and discover the thing you're looking for.
Excellent.
Okay.
Now, do the same thing for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Okay.
You can't, can you?
I sort of can. But I get the feeling that the answer I'm going to give is going to piss off a lot of people. And believe it or not, I actually held back for that. Okay? Because here's the deal.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what 5th edition wants you to do is it wants you to have, basically, it wants you to bring together a group of heroes who are better than everybody else in the world to begin with. A group of fledgling heroes, right? Sure. It wants them to accomplish a series of goals, mainly through combat. So mainly by fighting their way through the world. Various goals will be set in front of them. As they achieve these goals, they will attain greater and greater power, which will enable them to accomplish larger and larger goals ad infinitum.
Okay.
But this is where the tricky part gets, and this is where the reason why that angers a lot of people, because D&D is a lot looser about that than Super Metroid. And I can actually give a Metroid example of this that may make sense.
Okay.
Are you familiar in video games with the concept of sequence breaking?
Yes.
Okay. So, because of the various abilities in Super Metroid, it is possible to break the sequence of the game. To go do things out of order, confront bosses before you're ready for them, screw with the game's switches and plot tools that determine where you are and where you should be going, and all of that stuff, and defeat the game either massively underpowered or by skipping what should otherwise be required checkpoints or whatever, okay? And there is a huge community of Super Metroid fans based around finding the best and fastest sequence breaks in the game. They do videos online, they have online communities, Okay? It is this whole different way of exploring the game. And what's interesting is when the Japanese team responsible for the Metroid games saw this, in future versions, they took great pains to lock down the sequence breaking. To the point where in the fourth Metroid game, Metroid Fusion, not only is it nearly impossible to find ways to break the sequence, the one well-known way to break the sequence actually gets you trapped, and you get a message from the designers that say, "Nice try, you're very clever, now go back and play properly." Okay? So these designers locked down the game experience and said, "No, there is one way to play this game, and you will do it our way or no way." Okay? Mm-hmm. You can compare that to a game like Minecraft, which is the exact opposite, where basically all the game designer did was to create tools and interactions. Just a world filled with things and ways to interact with those things, and said, do whatever you want. So that's a very open, like, there's no prescribed way to play. A tabletop role-playing game, by its nature, and in fact, its main, like I said, its USP, its unique selling point, is the open-endedness of it. The GM has the power to create whatever kind of games they want. Players have the ability to play any type of games they want. And that's even built into the core mechanics of the game. I mean, the reason the GM exists is to allow the players to take actions that, if it was a video game, would break the computer because they weren't programmed in. I mean, the reason for the GM is, how do we resolve an infinite number of possibilities, because you can do anything you can imagine your character doing or attempt it. And we can't write rules for every possible scenario, so we need a human brain that can work on the fly to process that. So right in that, like, just that core mechanic, the mechanic of the GM, which is a mechanic, is already a nod toward that open-endedness of play. Okay? That said, the design of every role-playing game does create constraints on what can and can't be done in the system, and what can be done easily, and what can be done well, and what can be done poorly, and what is broken. And of course, it varies from system to system and game to game. Yeah, I mean, you're specifically asking about D&D, and we can talk about the constraints that D&D has around it. But in general, role-playing games aren't necessarily more open-ended. What was the question? Am I getting close to answering this?
I think so.
Okay.
My contention would be that in D&D 5e in particular, the core books have almost nothing to do with how they want you to play the game. But the adventures do.
Okay.
And it's different for every adventure.
Okay. That's fair.
All right. So they might not really care so much about what you do with the rules of D&D at your own table in your own setting, as long as everybody's having fun, it should be all good, right? But when you get to one of their adventure modules,
mm-hmm.
like Curse of Strahd or any of the other ones whose name I just absolutely cannot think of right now.
Princes of the Apocalypse.
Princes of the Apocalypse.
There we go.
The D&D you play in Curse of Strahd is not the same D&D you play in Princes of the Apocalypse.
Okay.
And that the people who designed those adventures had very different intentions for how you should play them.
Okay. I think we should unpack your contention a little bit more.
Okay, unpack it.
Because what you have to remember in discussing this is that Dungeons & Dragons is not a game, it is a game system.
Right.
The games are the adventures themselves, and the system is just a tool set that facilitates the playing of games.
Mm-hmm.
So Curse of Strahd, Prince of the Apocalypse, whatever, it would be fair to consider them separate systems running on the same, or the separate games running on the same game engine.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
You know, like two different video games running in Unity or whatever else,
sure.
You know, Havoc or what have you. So that puts the designers of D&D in sort of a different place, because now they are trying to they're designing a tool set, not a game. Mm-hmm. But they are also designing a tool set that in and of itself provides a very generic basic game. Okay, because the core rulebooks do have to work as a game in themselves.
Right.
Where with minimal effort, a GM could start running a game. Mm-hmm. And it does that. That's why it has rules for encounter building and monster stats, you know, and how to create players and you know, all that basic stuff is basically enabling a GM to use the toolkits to make a generic D&D game. So I'm just going a little bit further with your contention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just to point out the distinction between the adventure and the system.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, carrying on now.
Correct. Carrying on from that point. Okay, and you haven't played any of the modules, any of the adventures, have you?
No, I've read a couple of them though.
You read a couple of them? Okay.
Yeah, which is mainly why I haven't played them, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not really. I hate to say it. You know, I have a lot of respect for the designers of D&D, even though it doesn't sound like I do often. But I do have a lot of respect for them. You know, it varies from designer to designer, but whatever. And I have a lot of respect for Wizards of the Coast's ability to put out a product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not so much 5th edition. I really am down on 5th edition in terms of the product itself. But what Wizards of the Coast is really bad at is supporting their product. You know, I look at a company like Paizo and the stuff that they crank out on a consistent basis for Pathfinder. And I'm just referring to adventures and adventure paths. And those are a whole different kettle of fish from what Wizards of the Coast is publishing now.
So in the rules themselves, the core books, there's no real way that they would prefer you to play.
Well, right. There is. I mean, again,
they would like you to follow the rules, but then that's, you know.
Well, no, beyond that, I mean, if you want to look, because here we go. Here's what do the designers of D&D encourage or do to encourage or discourage a certain style of play.
Uh-huh.
So just looking at the core rules, what do the designers of D&D do? I mean, obviously, everything they either include or leave out is a way of them driving you toward a certain gameplay experience, right? So when you look at the characters and the character classes and most of the player's handbook, and I know this is going to be another thing that is going to drive people crazy, there is a strong focus on combat and combat abilities. Most of a class's abilities are meant to be used in combat. At least half of the spells that exist are meant to be used in combat. There is a large focus on calculating combat abilities like attack rolls, saving throws, die rolls, you know, armor class, what have you. Weapons and armor tables exist solely for combat. As far as the most mechanically rigorous instructions given to the GM and the DM and the Dungeon Master's Guide, they have to do with developing balanced combat encounters, and how many combat encounters make up an adventure day. And in doing that, what the designers are saying is that the generic game of D&D is about a group of heroes overcoming a series of 6 to 8 battles a day, and, of course, dealing with other obstacles as well. But primarily combat, because that's how they gain most of their experience, in the pursuit of a goal. Which is why I gave the explanation I gave. Right? That's the very generic game of D&D. You have a group of heroes, the GM gives them a goal, they fight through adversaries to accomplish that goal, and that's it. End of story.
There's no rules in there about how to get elected to a government position.
No, there are no rules about politics.
There's no rules in there about how to negotiate a peace treaty.
Mm-hmm. There are no rules of this one. People point out a lot. There are no rules for mass combat. The heroes cannot lead an army.
So we assume that since those rules don't exist, those aren't things that the designers consider to be the way you should be playing the game.
Right. Now, that's not to say that the rule, because again, the rules are open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
So to some extent, the designers accept that you're going to add on to the tool set.
Right.
That you're going to figure out how to resolve anything they haven't covered. But everything that they have chosen to use not to include as a rigorous system, every mode of play they have chosen not to describe, is work that they have left for the DM, which is in the way of the DM running that game. Like, before I can run the game where the players get elected to a government position and then have to lead an army against an orcish army. So I'm using my my check marks and chads system and my, armies and artillery system there.
Right.
Before I can run that game, I, as the GM, have to write those systems. Or at least figure out how I'm going to resolve that stuff. And, the GM, there's an action resolution system. The player could just do that on the fly. But the fact that the action resolution system is based on a player makes a decision to do something, to enact a change in the world in the immediate future, right? A very directed, individual, personal change. That's what the game is about. You don't, it's what does your character do? I break down the door. I pick the lock. I kill the orc. It's about what one individual person does in the face of obstacles that one individual person can overcome. As soon as you get to something like mass combat, there's a whole bunch of other questions that need to be asked, because suddenly you're not just resolving an action for you. Your action is to issue the command, but the success or failure of what you're commanding the army to do is based on a lot more than how well you command them. And none of that is built into the game. Same with you, if you're running the government. Now you want to pass a piece of legislation. No matter how well you argue for or against that piece of legislation, there are many other forces in the world that are also going to impact the success or failure to such a drastic way that resolving it as just your action would be silly. It requires more of a system. And whenever you put extra work in front of someone, you are discouraging them from doing the thing. Pure and simple. There are people who are willing to do the work. I'm not saying there aren't. But whenever you as a designer decide that this is work that someone has to do before they can play the game, you're telling a certain number of people, you don't play this game because you don't want to, because some people don't want to put in the work. How do you think they encourage or discourage certain ways of playing the game?
Well, I think they have a problem, first and foremost.
Okay.
They have the game as they wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the game as it is in their heads.
Yes.
And I think they get confused about which of those things is which. So when you ask them things like, well, what should I do with this? You get two different answers.
Mm-hmm.
You get the answer as it is written in the book.
Right.
And then you get the answer as they would like it to have been in some cases.
Well, now this goes down to talking about some specific people here. Like, if
sometimes it's the same person.
Well, like if you ask Jeremy Crawford for a ruling,
mm-hmm.
he is going to give you either the rules as written, or he is going to explain the rules as intended and then explain the mix-up that you're having. It's
mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I know it doesn't look like it says this, but it really does say this. You have to take into account this other rule that interacts with it. or something like that. Or, yeah, we worded that badly. And it was meant to say this all along, which I will all lump into, those are the official rules. I have to accept that everything is going to have typos and mistakes, you know?
Right.
And give them the right to correct those. But, well, let me ask you a question. Is changing the D&D game part of the core experience of the game? Whoa.
Yeah, it is.
I think I just broke my own brain, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So here's my question then. Now I'm going to throw this at you.
All right.
Changing the experience and making it your own is part of the core experience of D&D.
Uh-huh.
Right? So that is something the designers want you to do.
Yes. They know you're going to do it. They're encouraging you to do it. There's, in the book,
Hold on.
there are specific lines that encourage you to make the game your own.
Okay. Yes, there are specific lines. But insofar as the game is a tool set, and anything that requires you to do more work is discouragement, are they really encouraging you to make the game your own? I mean, how... Like,
you can play the game any way you want, but you have to stay on the field. Okay?
Okay.
It's like we're going to play a game of football.
Right.
But we're not going to worry too much about the rules.
Okay.
But what you do have to do is be on a football field, have two teams, and there's the goals.
Okay. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
This is just a simple one. What is the average armor class of a 5th level PC?
God, I don't know. I'm not a number person.
Even if you were a number person, you won't find it in the books. Okay, it won't tell you, this is where we expect the PCs to be at this level,
okay,
or that level,
sure,
or whatever.
Sure.
Okay, at what point can the characters teleport?
Whenever they get to that spell level.
Well, some classes get there sooner than others.
Right. At
what level can you expect a reasonable party to be able to teleport based on spells, magic items, or weird class abilities?
No idea.
This is where I'm getting at here.
Okay.
Although they say, yes, you can make the game yours, there is not a lot of transparency in the design of this system.
No.
Okay. There's a lot of, like, I would love to know, what is the baseline level of success when a player attempts an action? Okay, because when they set the numbers, they said it feels good to succeed X% of the time. And that's, what is that number? What was their target for that? So that if I want to play with the, say, proficiency bonuses, what number, what baseline am I playing with?
I know the wrong answer. Is going to be, somewhere 50-50. So like 10 on a die or whatever.
Roughly speaking, 65%.
Okay.
Okay, and that's honest. But see, here's the thing. In 4th edition, they were actually honest about it. They revealed that. They said, we in one of the design previews, they said, look, this is the number we targeted. We said, it feels good to succeed about 2/3 of the time. That's about right. Based on our playtest, that's what we figured out. I would argue that if you are going to start making the game your own in a way other than taking the components they give you and arranging, because writing an adventure in D&D in the core rulebooks is a matter of draw a map, plunk down your encounters according to our math, and then let the adventurers have at it, right? That's the tools that it gives you. If you really want to argue that this game wants to encourage you to make the game your own, there's a lot of information and discussion that is just missing. And it drives me crazy because when I sit and write an article where I'm trying to analyze the XP progression in the game, or where I'm trying to rethink the way that they design monsters, or even explain to my readers how they design monsters and how they came up with the numbers they did, I have to sit with spreadsheets and deconstruct their numbers. And I would argue that it is essential for the system to be transparent if you are really intended to make it your own.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that now, I mean, that's where I said I broke my brain, because I was about to agree with you. Yes, they encourage you to make the game your own. But now that I'm looking at it, I have played systems that wanted you to make the game your own. GURPS is a great example of a system that wants you to make the game your own. It is also ridiculously complicated. The Hero system, Savage Worlds. Those are systems that are intended to be futzed with. Futzed. So you don't have to bleep that. Okay? You're meant to tinker with them. You're meant to change the rules and play around with it. And they are very clear about what they're doing. They're clear about percentages and probabilities and why things are the way they are. D&D is not. D&D is very obtuse. It's not complicated, but it is obtuse. You have to do some work. And I know, because I've looked for things like, when are we going to have water breathing? When can my entire party survive underwater for any length of time? You know? Which they have a whole section on underwater adventures and combat. I know this because we were just talking about it in my Discord chat. That does not mention, hey, by the way, if you're going to run an underwater adventure, if your PCs aren't this level, they're going to drown. Because, you know, they don't have the ability to go underwater. That seems like an important point. So you say they want you to stay on the field. I say that they're even tighter than that as far as encouraging you to make the game your own. And I didn't realize how much until we had exactly this discussion. But the point that I was going to make before that was, if we accept that part of the experience... See, I wanted you to say yes. That yes, you're supposed to make the game your own, so that I could then make a point in defense of the game designers. Okay. But since you said yes and then I said no... I broke my own point, but I'm going to make it anyway. Here's the point. Mike Mearls, he loves to tinker with the system. I've been watching a lot of interviews and videos he's done, and when he's not talking about the core rules of D&D, when he's talking about the stuff he does to tinker with it, he's really interesting. I have no interest in what he thinks about the core rules of D&D because he's not good at it. But he is an interesting guy when he's talking about design, and he loves to do that. And you could say, well, now he's telling you, to ignore the game and play it differently. But I'm saying, if the game itself says, make the game your own, Mearls is playing the game exactly as it's intended. He's providing an example of, I'm making the game my own. Here's something to learn from. It's an advanced way of playing. You know, it's not... I wouldn't send a beginner who just bought the D&D rule books to Mike Mearls to figure out how to play the basic game. But when I started to like, man, I really want to rip out the initiative system. Yeah, I'd go listen to what Mike Mearls is talking about. And then on top of that, there's the problem of, although the game is published by one company, but it wasn't published by a hive mind. Okay, every rule that's in that game, I think we made this point earlier in some other episode, but every rule in the game is a compromise. There was a group of people sitting around the table arguing about the best rule. Some people won, some people lost, and those are the rules that ended up. So there is a case to be made for the fact that D&D, as written, is the one version of the game that not any of the designers actually wanted to play. You know? Just by virtue of it being a committee design, assuming everybody got some things they wanted and some things they didn't. It's the average. It's the normal. It's the thing that is right in the middle that nobody wants to be or nobody is.
This was kind of inspired in a left-handed way by Ambassador Bill. One of his many responses to one of our shows put this thought into my head.
Are you calling him sinister?
No, I am not calling him sinister, nor am I calling him Dexter.
Oh, okay.
There, you happy? I got that one.
Thank you. You're the only one I can make Latin jokes at, okay? the list of people is very small for that.
Yes, very small indeed. Anyway, this was inspired by a comment he wrote in on, and I just thought, this is how this show works. Things pop into my head, and I go, I'm going to say that, and then see what happens. So what I got to thinking about was, and this is actually partially inspired by him and then partially has to do with the things I've been doing lately. But what I want to know is, what elements does an IP, an intellectual property, have to contain in order to become a good RPG?
That's a really neat question.
See, because I look at things like Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at things like Lord of the Rings,
Right.
and those both have had, RPGs made about them. There's Star Trek RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
There's, there's a variety, right? You got your Song of Ice and Fire. You got, Doctor Who. You've got all this other stuff. So what is it about those? What do they have in common that makes them good ideas for RPGs, on the assumption that they are good ideas for RPGs?
Mm-hmm. See, it's funny because Doctor Who is one of those ones that I kind of quirk my eyes at. Like, really? That one?
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah.
And somebody thought it was good enough to do.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, even like looking at my own bookshelf, because right next to each other, I have both the Farscape role-playing game, which was one of the 1,000 of D20 knockoffs based on franchise, and also the Firefly role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
And would not call either of those franchises actually good IP for a role-playing game.
Right.
Okay. So here's you want my take on this, or you want to do your take first?
Well, I have sort of a list.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay.
Because you've had more time to think about this than I have.
Sure. The first thing I think... Well, it's not really the first thing, but it's the first item on the list. I won't say that these are ordered by importance. But the first thing I think has to happen is that the given IP has to at least hint at a larger world for other things to happen in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? In other words, if it's telling a very tight, very contained story, right? And this can be books or movies or whatever. If it's got a very tight, very contained story that just happens in a few locations with a few people, that is maybe not the best thing to turn into an RPG. There has to be a hint that there is a larger play space available.
Right. You have to have this idea that in addition to the story that you're seeing on the screen or whatever, there are all sorts of other stories happening or have happened in the past or are going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's got to be a lot of off-screen adventure that you wish you were also seeing. I totally agree with that, 100%. And which is where Star Wars and Star Trek, those both shine. Obviously, Star Wars has a huge universe, but even if you take into consideration just a limited amount, like the original trilogy, the Rebel Alliance is fighting the Empire, but the rebellion had been going on a long time, and it was still going on throughout the entire series. In the first book, or in the first movie, Luke had heard of the rebellion, right? Which implied that it was already up to stuff, and it was out there. In the second movie, the Alliance is on the run, right? The rebels are on the run because the Empire has gone after them and scattered the Empire to the four winds. So you have this whole sense that there are all these little rebel cells all hidden out on their own little ice planets and fire planets and lava planets and jungle planets and whatever, all struggling to escape the Empire, right? It's only once you hit Return of the Jedi that sort of implies that everything now kind of narrows to a point. Mm-hmm. And that's only if you accept the fact, like the suggestion at Return of the Jedi, and yes, I know there's a whole bunch of books about how after the second Death Star blew up, there was still a gigantic war to fight with the Empire. That you just blew up their one base. But, the on-screen movie story is, and then the Empire was never a threat ever again, the end.
Right.
Right? And in Star Trek, the Enterprise, whichever series you pick, the Enterprise or Deep Space Nine or Voyager, is just one spaceship in a gigantic fleet that is going to all corners of the galaxy exploring it. So there's a ship out there for you.
Item number 2 for a successful IP to RPG conversion.
Mm-hmm.
The characters you do see have to be compelling, distinct, and interesting.
Ooh.
In other words, you are not going to feel like playing an RPG based on a movie or a book in which the characters are kind of bland.
Okay. That is interesting, and I want to disagree.
Okay, disagree.
All right.
You're wrong, but go ahead.
Okay, no, well, hear me out here. before you pronounce me wrong. Okay. I don't disagree that obviously the story should look, the character should be interesting because you want to play that game. But the thing is, the story that you're seeing in the movie or the book or the TV show or whatever cannot be overly character driven. And the characters involved cannot be unique and special to such a degree that the stories of the other characters in the universe would be outshone by them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I mean, this is where I go against Firefly as a good IP for a role-playing game. Firefly was entirely a character-driven story.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about the characters, the choices they made, the interactions, their struggle with, morality versus being fugitives and all of that stuff. That's what made the show interesting and compelling. Unless you're playing those characters, you're not playing Firefly.
Right.
And I would certainly argue that a game, it is never a good role-playing game to just give the players the chance to step into specific characters that already exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's less fun than telling your own story in another corner of the universe as your own character in that universe. So I would argue that having overly interesting, exciting, unique characters is a detriment.
Yeah, maybe, but by the same token, when I say compelling, distinct, and interesting, I don't mean that they are the only real characters,
right? Okay.
In the IP, okay, which I think is kind of what you're getting at,
right?
There has to be a variety of them, You can't. This is where I think Doctor Who falls down,
right?
As an RPG, there's only one really interesting, unique, and compelling character, and that's the Doctor.
Right. Well, you know what? Actually, can I expand here?
Sure.
Okay. I think rather than talking about characters, I think the real key is that a good IP for a role-playing game is one in which the characters represent understandable archetypes. Okay, and there is a variety of archetypes. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about it.
In Doctor Who, for example, there are only 2 archetypes available. You are either Doctor Who or Doctor Who's friend. Right? I mean, or friends. Like sometimes Doctor Who has friends. Something like that, like, you take Star Wars, where, you have really great, compelling characters. But what's really important about them is one of them is a wise old master, and one of them is a scoundrel, and one of them is a bodyguard, and one of them is a pilot, And we see all of these different archetypes that represent roles that we could also step into in that universe. Go to Tolkien, and you've got hobbits and humans and wizards and elves and dwarves, and those are all good fantasy archetypes. And you've got the horsemen, and you've got the other archetypes that I'm sure I could think of if I spent some time. But you know what I'm saying? Like the characters are not just characters; they also represent roles that you could imagine stepping into in the world yourself.
I think we're talking about the same thing differently.
Yeah. Okay, that's entirely possible.
I think we are. Because I'm with you. Yeah, you need to feel like you could do the things that the people on the screen or in the pages are doing. And
well, you want to see them doing exciting things first and foremost, because you want you want a promise of exciting things. I understand that point too.
But yeah, yeah. The third thing I think you need is a strong. I'm going to push on this a little bit. A strong central conflict. In other words, if your main storyline is not really about a large or a complicated or an insidious or whatever kind of conflict, and it's more about personal character stories, like that is the main thing, is the personal character stories. I don't think you have as strong an RPG source material as you would if it was like the Empire or the Dark Side or the forces of Mordor or whatever.
Right.
It was not driving the plot.
I assume when you're saying a strong central conflict, the conflict does not have to be terribly specific. Like, a concept can be as simple as superheroes versus supervillains.
Right.
The good guys versus the bad guys.
Yes.
Well, otherwise there would be no superhero RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And I do I agree with that for the most part, but I also think there is a space in the hobby for character-driven role-playing games. You don't see them as often, but they're more of a niche thing. But I'll say, I thought the Leverage RPG. No, you know what? Actually, I'm going to back off on that point. As I start to think about the examples that I'm thinking about, I think you're right. I think the promise of your being able to invent character drama is less exciting than the promise of you being thrown into a strong conflict. Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, all right. Those I think are the three biggies. What do you think? What do you think? Have I missed something?
No, I think apart from my clarifications, and honestly, I only had two. Thinking about it, which was the, not character driven, but perhaps archetype driven, as we discussed, and the implication that there are stories to tell off camera that are just as fun as the story you're seeing on camera.
So where I started from this question, and I'm sorry to bring this up again for everybody who's absolutely tired of hearing about it. But I assume if you're that tired of hearing about it, you've left the show a long time ago. Why is there no Dragon Quest tabletop RPG?
Why is there no Final Fantasy tabletop RPG?
I mean, and I'm talking official. I'm not talking fan stuff. All right. And I think it's because it misses out on at least two of those three things.
Okay.
The characters, with a few exceptions, the characters are pretty flat.
Mm-hmm.
Their archetypes are not archetypes that jump out at you as being particularly good or interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the case of the hero. The hero has no voice. The hero has no personality. The hero has nothing other than what you, in your brain, give him. Right.
The hero is the silent protagonist.
Right. So I think it misses out on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also misses out on a large available play space. I mean, I realize that there's a lot of places to go and things to do and people to see.
Well, remember one of the things in Dragon Quest is that there are many, many different worlds also. There isn't just one world of Dragon Quest.
Right. But yeah, that and through the course of the games, whatever game you're playing, you go to, see, and interact with absolutely everything there is to go to, see, and interact with in these locations.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a hint of anything beyond that.
Right.
In fact, in some of them, the story you're given is so perfunctory that there's nothing you can do with it outside of what they do in the game with it.
Well, I think going beyond whether the franchise would be good or bad for an RPG, it's also important to note that in the case of Dragon Quest, Dragon Quest is really just a when you break it, when you take out the characters and take out the specific locations and plot lines and just assume it's a tabletop RPG where you build your own world and, characters you can be of these jobs and can have, these spells and what have you. And here's the monster stats for slimes and wyverns and goldmen and all that stuff. It's really just D&D. There's nothing in Dragon Quest other than the tone that is uniquely Dragon Quest.
Right.
Other than it's a spell list and a list of monsters.
Mm-hmm. The other big failure, I think, for a Dragon Quest RPG
mm-hmm.
is that for at least the first 6 installments, with possibly the exception of 4,
mm-hmm.
the one I really, really liked, whichever one that was, it's the same story every time.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, I mean you go after your big kit, your the special armor, the special shield, the special helmet, and the special sword.
Right.
Every single one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you have to have those before you can go against the big bad for that particular game.
Well, plus in addition, there's always a number of other trinkets.
Yes.
In the first game, you had to construct the rainbow drop out of the 3 relics.
Yep. And you had to do that 3 times because there were 3 of them.
Emblem, right? There was the 5 emblems or crests.
Yeah.
The third one, you needed all the spheres to wake up the god bird.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot to be said for that structure of game.
Yes.
Though.
And you always had
the 7 parts of the rod of 7 parts.
Yes. You always had to have the sands of time,
mm-hmm.
so you could move things back and forth in time if you needed to. You had to, for a while there, you always had to have the night lantern or whatever that thing was.
The change day to night. As soon as they added a day-night cycle, they had to immediately give a way for you to skip it.
Yeah.
Wow, we added this, and it's really annoying. So
really, it's the same game done 5 or 6 different ways.
Yeah, they're all remixes.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up because one of the things that people have always questioned is why isn't there a Legend of Zelda role-playing game?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that fails on 2 respects too. One is the stories in the Legend of Zelda games do not leave anything in the sidelines. There's nothing off camera that could be at least as interesting as what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's no space for other adventures. I know people are going to bring up the Sealing War and the Hyrule War and all that crap. No, okay, they're background events, but they do not seem remotely exciting. And also, there are 3 characters in Legend of Zelda. There's Link, Zelda, and Ganon, or evil, and that's it. And so you have the hero, the villain, and the MacGuffin / plot exposition. And there's just not enough archetypes to fill in. I mean, what role would you fill in that world? You could be the blacksmith, I guess. The old guy in the cave who gives passing adventurers the sword because it's dangerous to go alone. But yeah, that's why there is not a Legend of Zelda role-playing game. And of course, obviously the main reason why there isn't is because no company has thought there was a market for it and has been willing to pay for whatever the license would be. or negotiated it with the video game company. But there we go. But can I throw a question at you now?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so evaluate this as a potential role-playing game franchise.
Mm-hmm.
The Princess Bride.
No.
Right. By our rules, it fails.
It fails, yes.
Right?
It's the story is too narrow.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing going on off camera.
No, doesn't particularly hint at anything else. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got some Dread Pirate Roberts stuff, but that is so.
But unless you're the Dread Pirate Roberts, yes. That's not fun.
Yeah, that doesn't do anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no. The play space is very confined.
It's limited to characters, and the story is only interesting because of those characters.
Right.
It is literally a romance between two characters and their supporting cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do know that this is being made, or was made actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is one that I like when I saw. It's actually upcoming. I don't know. I'm having trouble finding information because it's supposedly coming in 2017.
Right.
But when I saw this, I was like, how do you make a role-playing game there? Because what do you do in that universe? Like, if you're not just playing the story of the movie, if you're not, okay, you be Fezzik, and you be Wesley, and you be the Spanish swordsman, and you be the princess, and you be Humperdinck, whoever, if you're not just doing that, like, what else is there? But until we had this discussion, I did not have a language to say why this was a terrible idea. You, sir, have empowered me to criticize this game that I have been meaning to criticize since I heard about it. I think I heard about this at Gen Con.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to, would you like to know a little more about it?
Not really, but yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yes, but no.
I will tell you, sir, that it is in the fudge system.
Okay.
As near as I
can
tell.
The fudge system or the fate system?
It says fudge.
Okay.
Primarily fudge. Your DFs. But it's apparently being done by Stefan O'Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
Stefan O'Sullivan, who did GURPS Swashbucklers, GURPS Bunnies and Burrows, and of course Fudge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Explore the world of the Princess Bride. All 5 locations.
Yeah, right. Explore the world of that swamp that was on fire, and also there was a castle.
Yeah.
And the field where and that one ruined castle that they had the fight in, the sword fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, and whatever. They can make it if they want to. I don't care one way or the other. It's not something I'm grabbing a hold of for.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, you could, like, there was space to expand. Like, you could actually, if you were willing to create a whole bunch of extra backstory.
Mm-hmm.
The war between Gilder and Florin. You could make a role-playing game about that, but at that point, then I would argue, well, it's not the Princess Bride anymore.
No,
now it's Game of Thrones set in a vaguely comedic parody of, very old, terrible historical novels.
Yeah, it's the Florin and Gilder game. It's not Princess Bride. It doesn't seem like a thing that I'm interested in, frankly.
Okay, so now let me follow up with another question for you.
Okay, you have more questions, sir. I have more answers.
more. I'm just gonna make you pull stuff out of your ear.
Uh-huh.
I'm getting better. It's stopping
Yes.
short.
Sure.
Okay. Is there a franchise that you can think of now that you would like to see a role-playing game of because you think it would work well that hasn't been made yet?
That hasn't been made yet. You, sir, are a jerk. Damn it.
What would you think I was going to ask?
When you ask me these questions, I always default these sorts of questions, like we did with the TV series thing last time.
Mm-hmm.
I always Discworld, okay, but then
Right.
Discworld GURPS exists.
Yeah,
and-
no. You know what? I'll even give that one to you because a GURPS source book is not a role-playing game.
No, I would like to see, but it has to be a system developed specifically for Discworld.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't fit. You wouldn't do it in D20.
No.
Nor would you do it in a purely storyteller kind of system.
No, it's got to be somewhere in between. Though, the one interesting thing that you could do with a Discworld role-playing game, insofar as Discworld is essentially a parody of fantasy universes, in which one of the features of Discworld is that basically it knows it's a fantasy universe. Right? Like,
Right.
they literally talk about the law of narrative causality.
Yes.
Right? They understand all of these things. The role-playing game version of Discworld would be really fascinating as obviously a Discworld setting that was also a game that in some way knew it was a role-playing game and made fun of that somehow.
Yes. And there would have to be elements of a narrative-driven system in it.
Right, certainly. Because, again,
because that's Discworld.
Right. Discworld is powered by the narrative.
Right. But it would not be a storytelling kind of game.
You know?
Not that there's anything wrong with those, aside from the fact that they're not the right system for Discworld.
It would be interesting if the starting conceit of the Discworld game is that you create a character who knows that he is under the control of something else from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And that, even your character's own actions are not guaranteed because the character knows he's a character in some way.
That's fairly common, actually, within the Discworld, because there's always a reference to the gods and playing games and the dice and the...
Right, exactly. So it would really be interesting if, in a way, the players were the gods playing the game of the characters' lives in Discworld, a la in Color of Magic, where Rincewind got trapped in the what was it? The evil god of eightness, right? Or the demon of eightness.
Oh yes,
number 8.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway. And at that point, there was, because the scene would keep switching back to the gods playing a la the scene from, like, Clash of the Titans?
Kind of, yeah, moving pawns around the board, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then Athena plays her, I help my hero card and can give him 3 pieces of advice and crap like that.
Yes.
Man, actually now, you know what? Shut off the recording. Let's write this game.
Yeah. I know.
Right?
I've been thinking about it for a long, long time.
It would be so hard to do it right, and I'd be afraid of anyone handling it because, with anything like that, there's always the danger of just references. Like, the whole game is just built on references to the source material instead of drilling a level past the references to the tone and themes under them and expressing those.
Yes, that would be essential. That's why the GURPS one doesn't work real well.
Yeah, it's a source book. It's slapdash. But my fear would be there would be a rule of where if you can come up with a sufficiently impossible thing to do, and it's your only chance, then it will succeed.
Yeah.
As a reference to the one scene where they were trying to
with the dragon. Yeah.
With the dragon, they were trying to shoot the dragon with the arrow. They were making him do like you have to put a blindfold on and stand on one foot with a bucket over your head and all of this other stuff.
Yeah, to give it a million to one odds because 1,000,000 to 1 odds happen 9 times out of 10.
Right. But my fear would be someone would just like turn that into an action resolution rule and call it a day. And it's like, there you go, that's Discworld. Instead of understanding the joke behind it.
Right.
You know? And then finding the mechanical expression of that. Anyway, wow, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, that's an idea. There you go. I just want to point out that there is a game that's sort of, but not really, is in the neighborhood of your suggestion of the players playing the gods of the with their pawns and that kind of stuff.
The players playing the gods, playing the characters.
Yes. Yeah. And that is Hong Kong Action Theater, the RPG.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tri-stat game. You play a actor taking a role in a movie, in a Hong Kong action movie.
Yeah, I think you've actually. I was going to say I've heard of this before, but I think you've actually described it to me
before somewhere. Yeah,
yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting little meta into the game itself. But anyway, as far as things that aren't Discworld that I would like to see RPGs for,
yeah,
in my head,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in my head, there is a game space for Rendezvous with Rama.
Except, isn't that really a limited story?
It is a very limited story happening in a very limited space.
Hey, speaking of which, just this is completely off the wall bonkers aside here,
mm-hmm.
but just something I learned recently. Did you know the space probe in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the one with the whales, that came to Earth looking for the whales,
is the Rama probe?
Was originally a prop for a Rama movie that never got made.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could just pretend you don't know this so I can be excited.
I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about. Tell me, please. What is the interesting
No, that's pretty much it now. And you ruined it. Thank you.
All right. Fine.
I got excited. I didn't know that.
That's neat. Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't know they almost made a Rama movie. What a shame.
Oh, they're still almost making a Rama movie. But no, there are two
They're also
things.
still not making Mountains of Madness, and we'll never see it.
Yeah. The thing with the Rama movie would be that, I mean, the Rama RPG that I really want
mm-hmm.
is not so much the Rama itself,
right?
It's that if you've ever read the novel, it's that sense of exploration and wonder and not really understanding what you're encountering.
Mm-hmm.
That appeals to me as an RPG. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be in space or sci-fi or on Rama itself. And I'm certainly not going to deal with the extra novels beyond the first one. There are certain series that to me just don't exist beyond their first couple of installments.
Well, there's series that don't exist beyond the first one because the first they didn't need more.
No. Yeah,
Rama is one of those. They did what they needed to do.
Yeah, Rama is one of those. Arguably, the Foundation trilogy is a good place to stop with 3.
Okay.
But yeah, something like that would be interesting to explore. Even if it was deliberately designed as a one-shot game.
Mm-hmm.
I think taking on the various roles of a crew assigned at in a crisis situation, a crew that is really mostly unqualified for the job, assigned to go explore something that they're not really equipped to explore, would be an interesting space in which to play a single one-shot game.
Though at that point, I would argue that now it's a game inspired by Rama, not really Rama the RPG. But
I know I didn't follow your rules.
No, I'm still on you with that though. It's still good, and there is a space, especially nowadays, for micro RPGs where it's a very specific experience, a very specific starting point for a story, and that would be the sort of place where you could build like First Contact. That's what you just call it, First Contact.
Mm-hmm.
And it is always a group, you generate a group of people who, because the human race was surprised by their encounter with something, they happen to be the people who are on the scene and entrusted to do the exploration of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever shows up. So, but no, there's definitely a framework for a micro RPG in there. Which that would be driven heavily by the creativity of the GM, though.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's not bad. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Each thing I'm saying is a thing.
It would be one of those things where I could probably guarantee I could get the play experience I want out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't guarantee that anybody else would get that experience as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's sort of the goal of the designer, coming back to the earlier question, is now take the experience that you want to get out of this game and translate that into a game.
Yep.
Good luck.
Good luck to me. How about you?
I'll mention one just in passing. Because you brought it up earlier. And this is going to be an interesting one because people are going to think it breaks all the rules. I would like the Metroid RPG.
Really?
Yeah. Because here's the deal. The first game and the third game in the Metroid Prime trilogy reveal that Samus, the main character of the Metroid series, is one of a number of independent special operatives called upon by the Galactic Federation to deal with threats that the Federation army cannot handle. They're bounty hunters, secret operatives, the whole shebang. And in the third game, the third game of the Metroid Prime trilogy, which was a side story, you actually get to interact with 3 of these other bounty hunters, or space hunters, they're called. And each one of them has sort of a thematic archetype and a role to play, and they've all had their own adventures, and they all know each other and talk to each other and whatever, and they're on good terms with the Galactic Federation. So right there, now those characters are not strong archetypes, but what they imply is there is sort of a superhero-ish setup to these people where you build a character around themed abilities. Like one is a shapeshifter, and one comes from an ice planet and can manipulate ice, and one is a technopath, and one is the main character of the Metroid franchise, and that's her special power. She was raised by alien birds on a planet that rained acid. Yeah. That was her special power. We don't need to... Yeah, it's fine. She can roll up into a ball really tiny.
Yeah.
But I want the Space Hunters role-playing game where everybody gets to create their own themed bounty hunter in the Metroid universe and go have all the other adventures while Samus is dealing with the space pirates and the Metroids.
Huh.
Because that stuff is there. It's not as prevalent on screen, except for the fact that the other thing that you see in the games a lot is that there is a vast universe of very, very fantastic worlds and locations, all of which are filled with ancient ruins and strange creatures and all sorts of things. So it's a world you want to explore. You have the themed bounty hunters as your strong archetypes. The games are not overly character focused, but the characters who do show up are interesting enough to pull you in. So yeah, I want my Space Hunters role-playing game. I want my superhero dungeon crawler in space. Which reminds me, I keep trying to remember I have to really check out Starfinder.
Mm.
If it is remotely a, Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawler in space, it might be close enough to what I'm after to finally scratch that itch. I hate to say that,
Yeah,
but
I have my suspicions of how that's going to turn out. But yeah, check it out. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
I briefly want to mention an interesting fact which cropped across my Twitter feed this afternoon, I think it was.
Okay.
WotC has placed 3 things for Star Frontiers on DriveThruRPG.
Really?
Yes, they have the official character record sheets, they have SF1 Volturnus Planet of Mystery, and they have SF2 Starspawn of Volturnus.
Have they put out the core rules? Are they available?
Have not yet.
That's an interesting choice.
But here's what you need to know. Okay? There's a website called the Star Frontiersman, which has, for many, many years, had a sort of handshake agreement with TSR WotC about republishing the original Star Frontiers modules, not changing them in any way, not charging for them in any way, simply basically converting them into PDF format.
Wait, WotC agreed to this?
At some point, yes.
That sounds so out of character for them.
Like I say, it's a handshake, word-of-mouth agreement. But the thing is, all of that stuff is up there still and is freely available. But how much longer that's going to be the case is questionable. Because what this appears to be is somebody, and I'm not going to say who, but somebody filed for an abandonment of trademark on Star Frontiers, the name Star Frontiers.
Oh.
Several months ago. And
okay.
that was subsequently denied, I think. We think that's what happened.
Right.
And so this may just be an effort to say, no, we are still trading it with this name.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like exactly what it is.
Okay. But what could happen is if WotC is publishing these and charging for them now, which they appear to be doing, that may mean that the resources available at Star Frontiers, man, are going to go away because the agreement stipulates that all that has to happen is that WotC has to ask for them to go away. And they will.
And if WotC is now worried about protecting the trademark,
right,
then the first step would be to put something out to show, yeah, we haven't abandoned this trademark. And then the second step is to rein in anybody who is violating the trademark so that the courts can't say you have effectively given up your trademark by not protecting it in this case.
Right. So there you go. That's that little drama. But I highly recommend, and I know I've said this on Twitter quite a few times, I highly recommend if you have any interest in Star Frontiers at all, especially since it's never had a new edition or anything like that. It is these are all the original games as they were originally written and released. Head over to starfrontiersman.com or follow the link in our show notes. And maybe grab those while you still can. Yeah, because it's got Alpha Dawn, Nighthawks, Zebulon's Guide, Gamma Dawn, the Alpha Dawn quick reference, the Nighthawks and Zebulon quick references, plus all available modules, of which there are 6. A total of 6 available modules, and those are all still up there.
So there's this comic artist who had been working for WotC for a while, and one of the things he was doing was he was putting together these illustrated poster maps of D&D adventures, and he started doing classic D&D adventures. I think the first thing he did was Tomb of Horrors. And it's basically this really pretty little drawn out map, and little, like little characters are walking through the dungeon, and it shows a dotted line, Family Circus style, which shows their path through the dungeon. And there's all these little call outs that say, and at this point, this is where, the fighter ran screaming into this archway and was teleported naked this many yards away. It's obviously funnier than that, but right. And I fell in love with these animation, or these cartoons, which you can still see some of them on the Wizards of the Coast website, and I assume you'll put the link to that in the show notes.
I will.
Jason Thompson, aka Mockman on Twitter, is also, he sells full posters of this stuff on his website. And I bought one as a present to myself right before I moved to Chicago. And as, unfortunately, when I got here to this apartment that I had bought semi-sight unseen, or rented sight unseen, sort of, discovered it's not really conducive to posterness. And I have not yet been able to hang it. But hopefully the next apartment that I will be moving to in 7 months will be more conducive to posterness.
There you go.
Anyway, he came across my feed recently, apart from these delightful little things, because he's got a Kickstarter up, which looks amusing for a game of, it's basically, what does he call it? Like the game of fast drawing comics or something. No, that's not
the Fast and Furious game of drawing comics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Which is, it's actually a takeoff on another game he had done, which I know nothing about. So all I know about is I watched the video on YouTube, or not on YouTube, on Kickstarter. And I made you watch the video also, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
And the video is amusing. Yeah, it's part. Yeah. I have a real problem with his voice, because I think it's him doing the voiceover and the delivery.
If that's his natural voice, I can't. I have a hard time believing that.
I don't know, but
but maybe we are being unfair, and
the delivery is so stilted. It's worth a watch of this thing.
Yeah.
But the game itself looks cute. The idea is you draw a number of cards, and you have to draw, like scribble out as fast as you can a 3-panel comic based on what the cards tell you to draw. Like the themes in the cards, or the characters or whatever that are on the cards. It just looks cute. And I'm not even gonna lie, this is just a blatant plug, because I like the guy's work. It makes me happy. It makes me smile. So yeah, go check it out. And if you're
that,
yeah, that's it. And I can't swear to anything about the Kickstarter. I have no connection to the guy at all, other than I like his stuff. Nothing like that. I'm not endorsing a Kickstarter or anything. I'm just saying, go look at it. It's cute. If it looks like your kind of thing, you make your own choice.
I do have to tell you that if you listen to this episode of this podcast on the day it releases, you will have 4 days to go. After that, you will be out of time.